in our workplace, there is still the perception of being weak.
We tend to wait for permission to speak up, to push back. I actually think a CEO now or leaders should be called chief mobilization officers. You really need people who are able to motivate, people who are able to understand, pick up weak signals, recognize,
Influence.
influence. Yeah, absolutely.
Hosted by Gabriella Vacca, you're listening to the EveCareers podcast.
I have today with me Rose Cartolari, who is not only a friend, but really a role model for me, and you'll understand why. She's an international leadership coach. She's also a C-suite advisor, tremendous experience, and an experience grounded in reality, meaning that she was an international executive at American Express and also at UNICEF. And she also founded her company with her husband, Sharper Pharmaceutical, which then she sold, and she has been able to focus on the her passion. So everything she's going to say is going to ground it in reality. I love that. Rose, thank you so much for being with
Oh,
us
Gabriella,
today.
you're so welcome. I'm delighted to be here.
Perfect, perfect. So let's dive in. Today is about from command to connection and really the power of soft skill and emotional intelligence. But before we start, Rose, it feels a little bit out of place almost to talk about soft skill and EQ in a time that is so turbulent with geopolitical situation, and even where our leaders in charge of the government are displaying more like a command the connection. So can you kind of help us reconcile those two views?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you've really hit at the crux of the issue, right? The people who are leading, by and large, the people who are leading today, have grown up with a very different idea of what it means to be a leader. It was, as you said, command and control. And the leader was the smartest person in the room. People got promoted because they were very good at what they did. And so they got promoted more. And then so they did more. And then, they kept getting promoted. That model of leadership is really no longer relevant today because there's technology that's creating, and evolving and changing the landscape so drastically, so quickly. We've got five generations, actually six generations now coming into the workplace. We've got multinationalism. So we've got teams that are working across the globe from different cultures, languages, experiences, age, functions, and they're all supposed to work together, right? And yet the work of a leader has never changed. You've been in this position, right? You're still, what are the two things required of leaders? Manage results today, or actually yesterday, but also create this wonderful future that's going to support us all and help us all grow. So in today's world, there is no longer the smartest person in the room. For any given problem, you don't know who's going to have that. So, whether it's maximizing results or whether it's trying to build a future, you really need people who are able to motivate, people who are able to understand, pick up weak signals, recognize,
Influence.
um, influence. Yeah, absolutely. Because what do you have to do? The only tool you have is the abilities to mobilize them so that they put their best efforts in solving a
Right.
problem that you might not even know, right? I mean, you've seen it. We don't even know where some of these problems are coming from. They seem to swipe in on us, and yet we're expected to manage them. So I think this is the basic change in leadership that requires us not only just to know, but also to be able to, as you said, influence, be a person of influence, persuade,
Yeah.
convince.
But in the so it's basically EQ, soft skills are necessary today. But do you think that especially with our in our workplace, there is still the perception of being weak? Because that's what I experienced during my many years ago when I didn't have yet the tools, I'd say, to balance, right, the soft skills with the command that sometimes you need it. So, do you think that the perception is still that it's weak? Is it recognized as an asset or not yet?
Um, Not yet because of the vocabulary, the words, this
Right.
idea of EQ, emotional, intelligence. Well, yes, we're talking about emotions, but we're not talking about emotions as in happy or sad. The goal is not to have everybody, sit around the table and love each other. The ability of emotional intelligence is, am I able to recognize my feelings, read a room, see what people are feeling, really just read the room for the non-spoken words, and then therefore make a good
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
And in emotional intelligence, there are a lot of soft skills, right? What are the soft skills? They're collaboration, they're listening, empathic listening, they're conflict management. There's a whole bunch of skills. I mean, we can't even count the skills.
Yeah.
But that's very different than feeling emotional or being emotional. Because I know incredibly emotionally intelligent leaders who aren't. They just sit there and they want to react, but they go, wait, that's me. I tend to not like people who like that. So maybe I need to listen more or find a way
Yeah.
to understand what they're saying,
Rose,
right?
you make me think about one of my key lessons of leadership, which was the ability to respond and not to react,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because when you react, you are putting your really probably your more, inner side out there, which could
Right.
be out for attack, right? But when I learn that managing my own self and the way I was perceiving specific challenges really helped me, gave me the ability to respond intentionally, right?
Right. Right.
And probably balance this concept of sometimes you do have to use authority.
Right.
Right? In
Right.
in even in an environment which has happened to me in the past 5 years twice, so not too often. But
Right.
what do you think about this balancing act, which is delicate
Well, I'd like
between
to go
this
back.
soft and
We can
yeah,
we can get into that. I want to go back a little bit about this idea of reflection, um, which is reflection, but I think more important is that listening. We actually don't even know what our problems are going to be, right? We don't even know, many of us, what the next generation of products our company is going to launch are going to be. We have ideas, but we know our ideas have a way of being disrupted and completely changed. So the key skill here with emotional intelligence is, am I able to listen to all the signals in the market, even the weak signals? So if I don't know what problems are, I don't know who's going to be able to solve them. And maybe it's some 22-year-old in Nigeria, or maybe it's a 65-year-old in Singapore. Am I willing to listen to them and hear them out in the same way? Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody, it's a democracy and everybody has the same voice. I mean, you and I know that that doesn't work. But am I, as a leader, do I know what my bias is? Do I tend to ignore one group and listen to others? Do I tend to listen to one style? So that's emotional intelligence. So for me, emotional intelligence is kind of like the delivery vehicle. I have a farmer background. So, it's a delivery mechanism for then delivering results. Because we don't want to listen to everybody because, I mean, that's a side benefit. Then we all get to know each other. And I do believe your life is richer. But the reason we're doing it from a business perspective is because we need to make better decisions and we need to make them faster. And we need a whole set of thinking around it, best thinking around it. And the best
right.
thinking are no longer just the people who know what you know, think like you think, but this. So that's sort of where my take on emotional intelligence is.
Yeah.
It's that ability to really read these tiny little signals. In the tech world, think of all the people who were strong in telephony in the
Oh
90s,
yeah.
right? They missed the smartphone craze. Now they're doing other things. They're maybe doing 5G or whatever, but they're no longer in telephones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right? What
absolutely.
happened there? They had the best people, they had the best
Yeah.
engineers, right? So, and I'm not saying it's all emotional intelligence, but one of the ways we do innovate is having different ideas ping together so a different idea comes. So that's that.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. The other point to consider is that as a leader in a company, right? The emotional intelligence help us influence a group of people towards a purpose. And the purpose is at the end what we're paid for, which
Yeah.
is so our alliance as a leader is not only to the people in the group and so on, but is what is the purpose of the company?
Yeah.
What do I have to
Absolutely.
achieve? And that gives a different perspective to this softness, let's say, of this
Right.
EQ and soft
Right.
skills, isn't it?
Right. And to build on what you're saying, because that's exactly right. I actually think a CEO now, or anyway, leaders should be called chief mobilization officers
I love
because
that term.
that's their job. Their job is to mobilize all these people of all ages, of all beliefs, all talents, all things around a single goal. So, what soft skill do you need? Well, really good communication skill. That's a soft skill, right? But the emotional intelligence is to know which communication to use where, how to mobilize all these different people. What do they need to know? Clarity in thinking. How do you manage the conflict? So, those are the soft skills. But the emotional intelligence is where, who, how much am I listening in? And I think it gets back to where, the other question that you asked, Gabriella, which I think we sort of missed the point in that. Like the more emotionally intelligent you are, the easier it should be to make difficult decisions. And that is because and you're using the highest skill level available to you to have difficult conversations. And you've created an environment where it is safe to do that. Right. So, I know you've had to lay people off. You've had to talk about difficult market conditions. You've had to talk about something working that everybody was hoping would be working, or, the series of difficult conversations that we all have to say, change in strategy, lack of investments, downsizing, whatever. What we want to do is make sure that people are so comfortable in having these horrible decisions that it doesn't shut down their brain. I mean, I think
Yeah.
of conversations at home, like with my husband. Every time we have a fight, we can have ferocious fights, right? There's never this thing of, oh my God, she's going to leave, or I'm going to leave, or now it's over. There's this larger, bigger idea that we all matter and we all care for each other and we all respect each other. So I think the trick for leaders is how do I, keep this intellectual, technical, sort of sparring going on, this conflict, if you want, going on, but making sure that the social repercussions
Yeah,
are
yeah,
low. So the friction,
yeah.
intellectual friction high, but the repercussions low,
Yes.
which
It,
is emotional intelligence.
yeah, it's like creating this platform of trust and respect,
Yeah.
which ties with the workplace culture, if you
Yeah.
think about it, right?
Yeah.
Which is finally now you we hear about the workplace culture. There are books that authors are writing, and it's all about the foundation, trust, and respect, and so on. I remember that 20 years ago, you know, unfortunately, nobody was talking about the culture of the workplace. So those are all great signs of change. But one final question, Rose, actually, a couple of more questions. So I love the fact that women are so, in general, they are so well positioned with soft skills and emotional intelligence, right? How do we develop it even further? How do we make it a real asset for us to be successful in navigating change in our career? What's your thought as a leadership coach specifically for for us women?
Well, for women specifically, I think I'd have to say something about visibility,
Yes.
right? Um, so I think we have, there's 50 years of research around women having incredible thoughts, having abilities, but we tend to wait for permission to speak up, to push back. And frankly, there's a lot of structural issues that hold us back too.
Mhm.
Women are viewed in very different ways. So it's this game that we have to play of being courageous and putting ourselves out there. and speaking up and saying our truth. But it's also work of going inwards,
Yeah.
of being very grounded and stable and having thought through. And again, that is the benefit of emotional intelligence. Is this a big whoop? Is this a small whoop? Um, do I feel strongly? Just because I feel strongly, does that make it true? Maybe, maybe not. But this ability to reason through with yourself with different lenses so
Yeah.
that you can balance this, sort of my mother used to when we were small, she's like, "Oh, I want my kids to be like trees, reaching for the sky with their branches, but deep roots." And I think this is the same with leadership,
Yeah.
right? Our job as leaders, women or men, is to push and help people soar. And you need each branch to soar because you don't know where
Love
it's
it.
coming from
Love
next,
it.
but
Love
very grounded.
it. So for all the women and some men who are listening to or watching this interview, I think there is no clear recipe, but we do need to experiment what works for us. Right? Is it, can we be sometimes just saying something in a way that is very direct, but just smiling? I mean, having an open facial expression already creates a good vibe in the room versus saying it with your with tense facial expression. So it could be, but we need to experiment on what works for each one of us.
Exactly.
But the
Exactly.
asset is available, so we need to tap into it.
Yeah.
One
And I
last
think
question,
it's,
Rose.
oh, so,
I
yeah.
think we are pressure for time, and do want to ask you one final question, which is, we have an audience which is different generations around the world, so different political situations, social norms, and so on. What would be your final word of wisdom for all those people who are watching us in terms of obviously soft skills and developing and all the conversation that we had today? What's your
Yeah.
final
So
word of
I wouldn't have
wisdom?
one thing, I would have two, which I
Oh,
think
which is,
are
could be
that they go
three,
hand in
honestly.
hand. So the
Actually,
first is the first is the best and biggest investment that you can make is working on yourself. It all begins in you. There's this Rumi quote. It's my favorite quote. It says, once when I was younger, I wanted to be clever.
mhm.
Now I would like to be wise. And I think we need that wisdom. I think we need that inner wisdom. Um, and just like we go to the gym to keep ourselves, we know longevity is based on physical fitness. I think longevity in thinking, staying ahead of the curve, being able to manage all of these things that are going on, I think you do need some sort of internal work on yourself. So that's the first thing. The second, I would say actively widen your reference group. Actively go out and solicit and befriend, not just solicit, but become really good friends with people who disagree with you, who and practice what that is. Practice being really good at being friendly and open and entering in dialogue with people who think differently than you, in
Yeah,
all ways.
love it, love it. To be comfortable with all the different perspective.
Yeah, because that's a
Um,
requirement now.
yeah. So I could go and talk more and more about these topics and others, and I hope that our chat was interesting to our audience. Um, if I had to ask for a final reflection from all of you watching this video is, at this point, one, you should feel a little bit better about yourself and your journey. It's possible. It's a complex process because it requires introspection and trying things out with your communities, but it's possible. And I just want to thank each one of you for listening, and also thanks really, Rose, for your wisdom, for sharing with us your passion, your story, your very concrete example you gave us. Thank you.
Thanks.